welcome all to another review episode of The Experience Point. Today, I'm going to keep it short and sweet as I possibly can. We're going to do Quantum Break, Xbox and Windows 10 for PC exclusive. Well, I guess that doesn't really make it exclusive anymore, but Microsoft exclusive game made by Remedy. If you're not familiar with that name, they are the creators of Alan Wake and Max Payne. So some pretty cool games, story-driven, character-driven action games is kind of what they do, and they are very good at it. So let's just jump right into it here. I'm going to break it down by each kind of different category that I think is relevant for this particular review, and we'll start with graphics. So, graphically speaking for this game, we know there's a lot of talk out there about the Xbox being inferior to the PlayStation. Obviously, it's inferior to PC. I did play this game on Xbox One. I did not play it on PC, though I have looked up quite a few gameplay videos on PC. And honestly, it's actually a rare instance that this happens. I didn't see a huge difference between the Xbox and PC versions. Now, it could be that the PC version, because it was so specifically developed for the Xbox One, that it's just a little dumbed down and it's not optimized super well. But that doesn't really matter because both versions are actually really gorgeous. The lighting in this game is really impressive. If you've seen previews, obviously during a regular just scene where you're just walking around, there's nothing particularly amazing about it. It's just regular lighting. But the Quantum Break has these beautiful moments when time freezes. They call them fractures and stutters, and everything will freeze. And there's all these different particle effects are happening, very just minute detail that's just gorgeous and really well done, and it just makes you feel like you're really there, and everything is frozen, and you can go around and just pick out all these little details the developers have put in there, and they do a good job of making, obviously, other than everything stopping, freezing, you instantly know there's almost like a wipe across the screen when time freezes, and it has its own kind of visual cues, even if there's nothing around you that would be moving anyway. So obviously if you're surrounded by soldiers, none of them moving, you don't need the visual cues. But if you're just in a hallway with a plant and a picture and a bench, those aren't moving anyways if time isn't frozen, but you immediately know. They do a good job of mixing the sound design. We'll get into that a little bit later. Facial expressions are done really well. Obviously, they're basically importing mocap actors directly into the game, but mocap doesn't necessarily capture 100% of the facial expressions. It's a mix of animation and mocap, and they did a great job. Remedy did. They, you can watch characters and absolutely get the emotions with small facial expressions, and that's something we're starting to really see done very well in games now. The last few games, even in the very late generation of the 360 PS3, they were getting better at it, but this is a whole nother level that I think is one of those details that this generation has brought into gaming, with these great facial expressions and ability to show more complex emotion during a conversation outside of the dialogue itself, which is really great. I will say, and these are kind of nitpicky things, but some characters, especially Jack, the main character, he walks really weird. He looks like me. He's got this weird pigeon walk, and he stands with his legs all spread apart, and he kind of looks like, about halfway on the evolution picture that you always see from the monkey crawling on all fours to the human. He looks like he turned around at some point. He's walking back down the ladder on that evolution drawing. And it's just something where I just feel like if you're making the game, it seems like that would be something they would notice. Like, why is he standing like this? Like, no one stands like this. It's really weird. Again, very nitpicky, but you know what? I'm going into the visuals. I'm telling you what I saw, what I didn't like, and what I liked. And that's definitely something that I was not a big fan of. It looks weird, especially since everything else is done so well. Small things like that. But visually speaking, it's probably one of the strongest part of this game is the visuals. They're gorgeous. Especially when you get into combat, all of the lighting of just from like muzzle flash to the different looks of when you're running and speeding and what that does to the world around you, and the color saturation and desaturation. Really cool change. Lots of good contrast with color and and lighting, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, if you're someone who thinks the Xbox is a piece of crap that can't play games with good graphics, go play Quantum Break. It's gorgeous, and the PC version, by what I can tell, is not necessarily all that much better. Again, that could be more the Xbox's fault than the PC's fault, just optimization kind of stuff, but that is something I definitely noticed. So so far, very strong. I don't really have a lot of complaints in the graphics department. Let's go ahead and move on to gameplay and performance. Now, performance-wise, I didn't have too many problems here either. There were a few times where there would be some small glitches, like someone would be holding an item, but the item is sticking out and floating in the air like a foot to their right. So like they'll be holding a pistol, but the pistol's floating to their right. Looks kind of goofy, like ghost pistol. There's really not a lot of problems that I had personally on the performance level. Frame rate stayed at a solid 30 frames a second. Never had an issue with that. I'm just dredging through. I took some notes before I did this, but it wasn't too much negative on the performance side. So yet another kind of strong part. Now, when we transition from performance into gameplay, that's when we're going to start to see some dips. Now, combat in this game is phenomenal. Combat is absolutely fantastic, actually. It's a mix of solid shooting mechanics, nothing special about the shooting mechanics themselves. I would have liked a better cover system. The game, you're supposed to be moving around a lot, but Jack will automatically take cover as you get near a tree or a truck or whatever it is, a concrete barrier. He will duck down, and there's no blind fire. So it's like, why are you even giving me cover? I can't even blind fire to, the shotgun guy rushing me right now. I have to stand up and aim and fire and risk myself getting shot in the face with buckshot, which is stupid. I mean, what kind of I don't understand why you'd make a shooter that doesn't have a cover shooter that doesn't have blind fire. So just kind of, you have to take cover sometimes. They should have just had snapped cover. It would have been a little bit better with blind fire. Another issue that I do have is the inconsistency and sort of outdated gameplay mechanics. Things like, there's times where there are doors, like in Dead Space, the doors will be malfunctioning. They open, close, open, close, open, close. And you have to freeze them, or that door will kill you. It's just stupid, kind of antiquated scenes and parts of this game that just make no sense, and you just roll your eyes like, this is so dumb. Give me a fucking break. It's just crap like that, and it gets irritating sometimes. The parkour is fucking terrible. It's just as tacked on of a gameplay element as I've ever seen. There will be a 5-foot tall box, like a big shipping box that you can climb up on because you're supposed to, but then there will be a 5-foot fence or a 5-foot truck. Well, no, we can't climb on those. No, sorry. It's, you can use your powers to rewind things to get a gate unlocked, but you can't use your powers to rewind to get this gate unlocked. It's just lazy game design, and that inconsistency not only hurts gameplay, but it also hurts the story. It completely breaks the immersion of me watching this character with these powers when I realize if you can see the mechanic in a game and forget that you're in the game world, but you're actually like, oh, I get it. Okay, so I can open this door, but this door, oh, nope, can't do it. Just, it's disappointing. And to see things like that, I just don't know if they got rushed at the end or what happened, but definitely disappointing to see that. That was not fun, and again, it just made you just completely roll your eyes with crap like that. Now, back to the combat, I was saying it was great. The powers, they are limited, the number of powers that you get, and you kind of get them all from the beginning, and that kind of sounds maybe like a not good thing. But this game's not super long. It's only about 10 hours, at least for me, and so you don't need a whole suite of powers. There's a little RPG element, but it's kind of stupid and not really worthwhile. I put a couple points into them and I was fine with the, I never felt like the challenge became too great because I wasn't leveling up my powers. But the way they interconnect in combat is pretty brilliant. You have this rush where you can run, you basically freeze time around you as you sprint to another spot, and then all of a sudden you appear and none of the soldiers know where you are, and you get like a few seconds of slow motion, just blow them all away. You can blast them, so you can freeze like 1 or 2 people at a time in this like ball of frozen time, and then you just unload a whole clip of assault rifle there, and it freezes for a second, and then it'll unfreeze, and all the bullets you fire just slams into them like a shotgun, and just boom, and they die, and then you can shield yourself, so like bullets will hit the shield that you summoned, and they go really slow, and you can just get out of there, and you're protected. And then once you start, so you'll blast them, sprint, shield, fire, and it's just this really cool loop in combat that is so much fun. Probably the best part of the game as far as gameplay goes. So I'll leave on that positive note. Overall, I kind of give the gameplay kind of a middling score because of how bad the rest of it is. But the combat is absolutely fantastic and makes the game worth playing, in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and move on to the story and the narrative next. And that also includes sound design, so we're already coming up at the end. I told you guys I was going to keep this short. And finally, here we are at the story and narrative. Probably one of my favorite and least favorite things about this game. And you may notice this becomes a theme with me and a lot of game reviews that I've been finding with games recently, is that there are a lot of things to really, really like about Quantum Break. Not love, like. But with almost every major positive, there is a negative that kind of is, ball and chain with it. And I have found that that's in a lot of my reviews. It's just rare where you find a game that does most things right. And that's why we try to use the whole scale from 1 to 10 instead of, 7 being average, because I need an area for these scores that is going to better replicate and better illustrate where I'm putting this game in relation to those games that have less of the ball and chain negatives. Because the idea of this story is really, really cool. We've all heard it before, time machines. So it's not necessarily original, but they don't... I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of how to say this. Remedy does a fantastic job of not falling into the same traps that most time-traveling stories fall into, which is, well, where does it end? That's the biggest thing for me. Like with Terminator, okay, so they sent a Terminator back in time, and then they send Connor back in time. Well, why didn't they just send Terminator further back in time and kill him, kill her great-great-grandfather and just keep going? And it would just never end. And then you're creating all these multiverses. And that's just a big story hole that you just forget, because the Terminator movies are phenomenal. And so you're like, oh, well, this is still really fun and it's a cool idea. Well, Quantum Break does a great job of that by saying that when the time machine was built, so 2010 or whatever it was, is the farthest back that you can go, is when this thing was built. And there's one exception to that I won't spoil for you that actually makes it pretty cool. So for a while, the story will be kind of hard to follow, and it's kind of boring in the beginning, to be honest. I didn't really care about any of the characters. I didn't really buy the chemistry between the characters. They're supposed to be like old friends, and the performances were good, but I felt like the writing was a little lacking in character building, small parts, that's what like Naughty Dog does so well with Uncharted and Last of Us. It's the small little conversations during gameplay that they're not exposition, they're not plot, but you remember the things that these characters are saying, and you begin to learn who they are as a person, and that's what makes you care about them, and what makes the fighting and the big plot parts of dialogue mean more, because these characters have been developed. So the development of these characters is pretty limited, even with the television series that is with it, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So character development is pretty weak, but the performances are decent. Lance Reddick, the man who plays kind of like the right-hand CEO of, I don't even remember the main character's name, Paul Serene, who is Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. He's probably the best performance of all of them, both in the television show and the game. Lance Reddick, man, he's just a total badass. But The story does pick up. I think it's like Act 5. I can't remember. There's like 6 or 7 acts, but man, there's a part in there that I will stick with me. It was really good, and I remember, it took me a while to get to that point. I could only play for a couple hours and I kind of get bored and turn it off. And then I got to that point and went, whoa, okay, this got real. And that part of the game was so good that it launched me through the rest of it. I just couldn't stop playing from the kind of like this, I would say a little bit past the halfway mark. And that's the sign of great storytelling. And it got really good there, a little bit out, but a great game and a great story shouldn't start being great in the middle of it, so that is an issue unto itself. But for the most part, by the end, the ending is, it's not a cliffhanger, but I would have just preferred maybe something a little more reflective from Jack, the main character, looking back on what happened, and then you can kind of talk about, you can leave off for a sequel without making a cliffhanger. And again, it's not a cliffhanger, but it's just kind of stupid. And I know that doesn't sound like a very detailed critique, but I just don't want to spoil it for those of you who decide to play this game. But yeah, the story can be a little clunky. The performances are good, but the writing is a little meh. Let's talk about the television series really quickly. I call it television. It's a live action series. It is better than I thought it would be and worse than I had hoped it would be. Again, performances are pretty good for the main characters. Unfortunately, the supporting cast is god fucking awful. Some of the actors they got in there were terrible. It feels pretty low budget. Everything is filmed somewhere that a film student would go to make their student film for their professors, docks and alleys and stuff where, there aren't a lot of extras, or they don't have to worry about actually using real roads. And so you can just tell it felt very budget-esque. There's a okay car scene in it. And I don't know, I felt like I liked the way that it impacted the pacing of the overall game. It was really fun to play for an hour or two, and then, it's like 9 o'clock at night. I got to get to work, got to go to bed in a few hours or whatever. And it's kind of nice. The show comes on. You're like, oh, okay. And you kind of put the controller down. You can grab a snack and just kind of relax a little bit. And that I enjoyed the way it impacted the pacing. But the show was mediocre at best. And I don't know that it really did that much to add to the main story of the game. There are a few key scenes that really do impact the way you see events unfold in the main game that are pretty fun. But as far as how you affect the TV series, I didn't really see anything major at all. Nothing that, I felt like they should have made it a little more obvious, honestly, about how you're impacting the television show. Because for the most part, it's like, I don't really see how I'm affecting this at all. There's a few ones that are obvious, but for the most part, like I said, mediocre. So it was a fun experiment. I'm glad they did it. You want people to take risks, so I definitely appreciate that. So yeah, overall story, mediocre. Gameplay, because of the great combat, is good, but the rest of it is pretty bad, so I'd land that in mediocre. Sound design is pretty good. The guns could have a little more weight to them, but that's okay. I'm not going to nitpick too much there. The music, not very memorable. I don't even remember the music at all. So pretty low impact on the musical soundtrack. So nothing really big there. That's pretty much wraps it up. Let's go ahead and I'll give you guys a final score. So, what's the final score? What's my verdict here? I am going to give this game a 6.5 out of 10. Now remember, 7 is not average. 5 is average and mediocre. So, even with all the mediocrity in this game, the overall experience left me thinking, that was alright. Yeah. 6.5. That's how I got to the 6.5. It was alright. And some of you might not really care about this number score. I just do it because I know people like it. It's more about the content of the review, what you care about most in a game. I'd say gameplay and story are equal for me, with a few exceptions like sports games, which we've talked about that before. So certain things you might not care fuck about the story and just care as the gameplay good, or vice versa. So it really comes down to the eye of the beholder. But I've got this at a 6.5. I would definitely say it's worth a pickup, especially if you're an Xbox or PC owner. I wouldn't pay $59.99 for it. I don't think it's a $60 game. Wait until you get a sale. If you can get this for $30 or less, I'd say you got yourself a good deal and a worthy game for that price, $29.99 or less. So maybe wait for the first wave or two of sales. Definitely recommend picking up and playing this. I'm hoping that this will spawn a series of Xbox and PC exclusives that we can then, they can go back, because I trust Remedy as a one of the better developers out there, honestly. You have Bethesda, you got BioWare, you got Naughty Dog, you got Housemarque, you got a few. There are some truly incredible, CD Projekt Red. I'd put Remedy, I don't know right in there, but in that kind of conversation of, top 10 developer right now. So I would trust them. I hope they make another Quantum Break or a sequel to Alan Wake or something, but I think Quantum Break was good enough to build a series off of. Sometimes the first game is there's enough good ideas here where they can go in, they can fix the problems, and make, a Game of the Year contender out of the sequel. And I hope that's what they do. So yeah, 6.5, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the review. I'd love to hear what you thought of the game if you played it. Let me know in the comments below. Please go ahead and give us a like. Subscribe if you haven't. We do videos almost every day. There's a couple days a week where we don't get videos out, so we're pretty consistent, and we'll definitely look forward to having you guys hang out with us in the future. Thank you so much. My name is Ian, and this was the Experience Point review of Quantum Break for Zero HP. Later, everyone.